When I got to the barn this morning, there was this crazy fog that was covering everything. It was even pretty chilly out, so I had to put Huckleberry's jacket on him. I am planning on working Scarlet this morning after I feed all of the horses breakfast. But before I do that, I'm going to go around and check all the boys in this pasture just to make sure they're doing okay.
Come on. Pete. 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 Come on, Pete. Come on, Pete. Come here, Peto. Hey, Pete. Hey, buddy. Boy, Pete. Oh, Pete.
It was kind of nice to have Pete come right up to me today and look for some scratches. Right when I get done checking on all of the horses, Huckleberry lets me know that it's definitely time to play this morning. When it starts getting really cold out, Huckleberry is very hard to pry out of bed in the morning, so he does spend a lot more time at the house when it's wintertime. But it looks like today, with his fancy jacket on, he is full of energy and ready to go. All of the boys are looking pretty good this morning, even though Stewie is picking on Pete a little bit.
You okay, Pete?
Since these boys do have some of their round bale left, I just have to give them a little bit of ration balancer this morning, and then I'll be done with their feeding. I thought Gus was looking at the badger that's been out. I've seen a bunch of holes he's made, and typically he is right on the other side of this big dry lot.
All right, boys.
The fog definitely made for some really cool video this morning. It's supposed to warm up in a little bit, and it should all burn off when that happens. It isn't super cold out this morning. Huckleberry probably doesn't need his jacket, but he really does like to wear it. He found a tiny little stick for me to toss for him this morning. And as we were heading back in the barn, we saw another badger hole.
Come on. Nigel. Frisco Bill. Hey, Zig. Hey, Ziggo. Hey, buddy.
Because I do want Scarlet to focus this morning, I won't be turning her out with Ziggy yet. I'm really glad that I covered up this new hay last night. It definitely rained a little bit, so it would have ruined the top bales. Huckleberry was on high alert this morning, checking out all of the badger holes, making sure that he wasn't still in there.
Hey, Stu.
I noticed this morning that little Gus was having a tiny bit of trouble chewing his grain. After I get this water turned off, I'm going to go back and see if I can make him do it again and get a little video for my vet. I also noticed another giant badger hole over here. This is definitely a fresh one too. Huckleberry gave it the all clear though, so I don't think the badger is actually around this morning. Even though I've been at this barn for about 8 years, I've only seen him a handful of times. He is a very sneaky animal.
Gus.
Because I do see my horses every single day, I notice when something is just a little bit off about them, and I did notice little Gus's chewing this morning is quite odd. He did just have his teeth done in the spring, but the way he's chewing right now is not normal, so there's something that's probably going on in his mouth. I need to get checked out. He's always a little bit hard to read around breakfast time because he does get quite grumpy. But if he does have something hurting him in his mouth, then that's likely to make him even more grumpy. Studman, Gus, and Goose have been enjoying the new fence I put up for them. It also looks like they've been munching away on their round bale pretty steadily since I put it in. I do think the decision to put 2 nets on this one was perfect. These horses have been slowed down quite a bit. The only thing I really don't like about this pen is where the gate is. It's not really high enough for the rest of the fence.
Where's your ball? I don't see your ball, buddy. Come on.
When I was heading back to the barn, I noticed that Gus was acting like he needed to get something unstuck from around one of his teeth. And then I also noticed that Whiplash was being weird too with his teeth. When we did Whiplash's dental in the spring, my vet did say that he had one tooth that was suspicious. So I think if I'm going to be taking little Gus into the vet, I might as well take Whiplash too. Before I can work Scarlet this morning, I am going to clean out the stalls in the barn.
Hey, Huckleberry. What are you doing? Not for dogs, buddy. Are you kidding me? Leave it. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Huckleberry was getting himself into all kinds of nonsense this morning. First, he wouldn't stop eating the horse food. And then he was eating poop.
Go on, load up.
Pretty typical stuff for him to do, but I just didn't want to have to worry about him while I was doing chores this morning. To add insult to injury, I could not get the four-wheeler started this morning. It was a little bit cold, and it kind of seems like the battery's dead.
Nigel.
It is supposed to be getting quite a bit warmer this afternoon, so hopefully this old girl will start up and I can move some turds around. But for now, I'm going to have to do it by hand. The four-wheeler typically does have some trouble starting in the winter, so it's around the time of year where I stop using it to do chores. Huckleberry was really giving me a stare down every time I walked past the truck. He was very upset with me that he had to stay in here.
Ready to go home?
Because Huckleberry was being such a distraction, I did take him back to my house, have some lunch, and then came back out to the barn. And it does look like the second half of the day is going to be much nicer than the first.
Woo!
Before I work Scarlet today, I am going to clean out the round pen and drag it so the footing is as good as I can get it. Today I'm going to be continuing her saddle training, so we've already done the surcingle, we've desensitized her a little bit to the saddle, but today I'm going to see if maybe she's ready for me to actually cinch it up. When I originally started my channel, I did not want to make a solely horse training channel. I do train a lot of horses, but I do also think that it is a very hard skill to learn from a video. There is a lot of nuance to it, so it's really better to learn in real life so you can have instant feedback from an actual horse. I do like sharing how I do it with these really reactive horses though, because I think that's a skill that not many people have the opportunity to learn. And I know a lot of you guys don't even own horses, but it is really interesting to see these horses change from day to day and session to session. After I let the boys out to meander around the big arena, I came back to the barn and found Nigel sleeping in a slop pit. Pretty typical for this little turd. It looks like his run-in shed is delayed a few days, so it'll be a while before I can put it up, but it is nice and sunshiny out now. We are not expecting any snow for at least a couple more days, so I will definitely be able to put it up in time.
Oh, sassy girl. You're crazy.
With all of my little chores complete, I can now get down to business cleaning out this round pen and fluffing up the footing a little bit. There are just a few little spots around where it's still wet. I don't think this is going to be too slick for Scarlet. Even though I've only done a few days of saddle prep with her, I do think she'll be able to keep her cool and not be too frantic.
Goofy.
I was having trouble finding Goose, and then I spotted him hiding behind the round bale. Since it's been quite a while since I worked with Scarlet with a surcingle or a saddle or anything, I'm gonna just set it here in the round pen while I get some things ready and she can sniff it and get herself reacquainted with the saddle. I would really like Scarlet to have her own saddle that I can keep using on her, so today I'm going to try on the newer saddle that I rode the Charles mule in the other day. I do have to go ahead and replace the off billet and the latigo on this saddle just so it is not going to come apart. If you guys have been watching my channel, every session I've done with Scarlet so far in preparation for her saddle training has been on video, so you can go back and look at those if you want to see what we've been building up to today. My game plan for today is to put the surcingle on her, let her move around, and kind of see how she is doing with that. She does seem to be pretty interested in the saddle, and this is a different pad. I haven't used this pad on her before. So I'm just going to get some things in order and let her check everything out. And once she gets bored with it, I'm going to pop back in there and we are going to get to work. I grabbed all the pieces I have to put on the saddle. I grabbed a breast collar as well. Scarlet did recently chew through the little clip part of her long line, so I'm going to be switching out her halter for just a different rope halter with a really long lead on it so I can have a little bit of control over her today. Because this is her first time with the saddle being tightened, I don't want to just let her free range around the round pen. I want to be able to shut her down if she gets way too frantic. It's pretty common for people to saddle up their colts before they learn how to lunge, but I like to do that part first. Then if something goes wrong during the saddling process, you do have a little bit of control over the horse and can help guide them through. Scarlet was just a little bit squirmy about the saddle pad. This one she hasn't seen before. It's an all wool pad. It's a little bit too long for her back. I'm still gonna go ahead and toss it on her and put the surcingle on, but there's a chance I might switch this pad out when I go to put the actual saddle on her because it is really stiff and I think she really just liked the other fluffier one better. Of course, she will eventually have to be okay with several different kinds of saddle pads touching her, but for the very beginning, since she is so sensitive, I'm going to try and make it as easy for her as possible. She had a little bit of a scoot there when I put the surcingle on her. It's really not a big deal. I'm just going to take my time today and make sure she stays in a nice, calm frame of mind. I was able to get Scarlet cinched up rather quickly. She settled right in and lunged around perfect. I am gonna go ahead and switch out this harder pad for the nice fluffy one that I have for her. I think this will give me a better idea if the saddle I picked for her actually is going to work too. Again, she was just a little bit squirmy when I went to put the pad on her. It was completely different than the last one, and I waited until she stood really still for me to put it on her and take it off a few times. The saddle today has no back cinch on it. I am going to saddle her a few times without it, and then when she's feeling more comfortable, I'll add it later. After Scarlet stood still for me to throw the saddle up multiple times with the stirrups dangling and everything, I went about adjusting the girth and the breast collar. She stood really well for this. I truly think that if your horse cannot stand still with the saddle on its back and you moving around it, then you probably don't need to be cinching it up. I've only had the saddle on her once before and I didn't cinch it up, but today she did seem like she was ready. When I sent her out on a little lunge circle, she was a tiny bit nervous about it, but she kept it together and was able to move around the round pen really nicely. After she got over her initial shock about the saddle, I sent her back out on the outside of the round pen and I really wanted her to lope around with the saddle on. She had a few little spots where she caught the stirrups dangling out of the corner of her eye and she scooted around, but other than that she did really good for the first time ever having a saddle cinched up on her. Every time she seemed pretty calm and relaxed, I went in and checked her tack and I moved around the stirrups, gave her some reassurance, and then sent her back out to feel the saddle moving around again. When I put a saddle on a horse for a first time, I will always use a breast collar, and I always like to make sure that the saddle fits them relatively well. If you are starting colts, you should be able to just set the saddle on top of them and see if it fits. You shouldn't have to get them sweaty or run them around first. This saddle that I picked for Scarlet fits her relatively well. It might just be a little bit too wide in the gullet. This saddle setup would probably benefit a little bit more from a thicker, sturdier pad. The fit, however, is acceptable, so I'm just going to keep on using this saddle. There's no reason to switch it out. When I start my colts, I generally like them to walk, trot, and lope each direction around the round pen, just so they have the opportunity to see the pieces flapping out of both of their eyes. As I suspected, Scarlet is a little bit more goosey one way than the other. Even though I do know that she is a little bit scared right now, she keeps coming back to me for some reassurance and guidance, which is great. Again, throughout our session today, I did make sure to handle the saddle and flap around all the pieces and tug on the cinch and the back cinch billets. Basically just moving everything around that moves so she has a better understanding of what the heck is going on. If you guys remember when I've saddled up Studman in the past, he does buck pretty decently, I would say. After working with him for a while, I do think that he has some past like really bad experiences with the whole saddling process, and that is the reason he bucks. I feel like I did a pretty good job getting Scarlet ready, and even when she gets scared, like right there, she doesn't completely lose her mind. She keeps moving forward, she gooses around just a tiny little bit, and then she's able to contain her fear and get back down into a calm state. Typically, the 3-beaded lope is where the horses will have a little bit of trouble. The stirrups tend to kind of fly out from the sides, and then the horses can see it out their eyeballs, and that does give them a little bit more of a scare. I wouldn't say that Scarlet is 100% comfortable with the saddle on her at this point. She still gets nervous at times, but she's accepting it pretty well. During our whole entire session today, Scarlet really didn't have any big scares or explosions. At one point, she did get a little bit extra surprised by something that was dangling on her. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but that happened right there. She just kind of scooted around and hopped a little bit. Even after I slowed it way down, I could not tell exactly what set her off. I think it was the billets for the back cinch maybe poked her in the belly and she got a little bit goosed by that. She really got over it very quickly though. She was back to moving around the round pen really nicely. This whole session today was not very long either. I think overall it was definitely less than an hour, probably closer to 40 minutes from the time I put her in the round pen until the time I took her out. I'm really not chasing her around to get her tired or docile down. I'm just kind of letting her figure everything out on her own. Every once in a while, she'll take an odd step and something will flap around and she'll get a little bit frightened by it. But as we made a few more laps around the round pen, she really started to understand pretty quickly how the saddle was going to move when she moved. One thing to notice is that there is a storm rolling in, which kind of seems to happen every time I try and get this horse worked. With the pressure changing, the horses can be a little bit extra fresh, and she was able to keep her cool really nicely today. She was listening to all of her cues. She stopped when she was supposed to stop. She changed direction. She moved out really nicely. With the storm kind of rolling in a little bit more, I decided that this is probably a pretty good place to call it a day. She is a tiny bit tired, but this girl has not even broken a sweat. I think I did a really good job keeping her in a calm state of mind throughout her learning activity today, except for maybe this spot right here. I left her ground tied and she got a little bit spooked by the rope dangling around her leg. In times like these, it's best just to get them stopped and realize that the rope that's attached to them is actually what's in between their legs. Typically, when this happens and she takes a step and the lead rope touches her leg, she won't freak out. I think because she was wearing the saddle today, she was a little bit extra sensitive, so that's why she kind of ran around a little bit. I was really glad I was able to shut her down with minimal effort, and after I got her caught back up again, I did lunge her both directions just to kind of calm her back down more. Because this is the very first time I have actually saddled her, I'm going to take this whole thing off and then I'm going to go ahead and put it back on again today. She didn't buck at all the first time, and I don't really expect her to the second time, but typically what I'll do with my colts is I'll continue to saddle them, taking it off, putting it back on until they don't buck at all. Since she is a star pupil and has been really good this whole entire time, I'm probably just going to have to put it back on her one more time and trot her around, and if she's good, she will be done for the day. Before I saddle her for the second time, I am going to walk her around just to kind of give her brain a little bit of a reset. And when we make it back to the middle, I'm just going to go ahead and saddle her up like a normal horse and see how she does the second time. Since she was so good to get saddled back up again and then she moved around the round pen really nicely, I'm gonna go ahead and slide the saddle off and she is going to be done for the day.
Sorry, girl. Scratcha. Crazy girl. There.
I hope you guys enjoyed that little snapshot into Scarlet's under saddle training. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.